David Crispin with the United States Marine Corps.
Jacqueline Beam, 519th Military Intelligence, U.S. Army.
Matthew Hernandez, United States Navy.
Keith Claxton, United States Navy.
Paul Portillo, United States Navy.
Robert Griego, U.S. Navy, Operations Specialist.
Chris Oakley, United States Navy, United States Marine Corps, State of New Mexico Army National Guard.
Melinda Medlin, United States Army.
Norman Aragod, U.S. Army National Guard.
Raven Nieto, United States Army.
Oscar Martin Lopez, United States Marine Corps.
Martin, United States Army, retired.
Valentino Baca, United States Marine Corps.
Jeff Folgate, United States Air Force.
Kenneth Quintana, United States Army, and as well as New Mexico National Guard. Combined service, 24 years.
Santa Fe County is hiring. Every Tuesday, Public Works holds a rapid hire event at 102 Grant Avenue at 8:30 a.m. Also, the Correctional Facility holds a rapid hire event every Tuesday at 9 a.m. That is at 28 Camino Justicia. We have great jobs, great pay, and great benefits. Come work with us.
Why do you work for Santa Fe County?
For my family.
For your safety.
For you.
For my community.
For the public.
For the community.
For the retirement.
To serve my community.
For my family.
For the outdoors.
David Crispin with the United States Marine Corps.
Jacqueline Beam, 519th Military Intelligence, U.S. Army.
Matthew Hernandez, United States Navy.
Keith Claxton, United States Navy.
Paul Portillo, United States Navy.
Robert Griego, U.S. Navy, Operations Specialist.
Chris Oakley, United States Navy, United States Marine Corps, State of New Mexico Army National Guard.
Melinda Medlin, United States Army.
Norman Aragod, U.S. Army National Guard.
Raven Nieto, United States Army.
Oscar Martin Lopez, United States Marine Corps.
Martin, United States Army, retired.
Valentino Baca, United States Marine Corps.
Jeff Folgate, United States Air Force.
Kenneth Quintana, United States Army, and as well as New Mexico National Guard. Combined service, 24 years.
Santa Fe County is hiring. Every Tuesday, Public Works holds a rapid hire event at 102 Grant Avenue at 8:30 a.m. Also, the Correctional Facility holds a rapid hire event every Tuesday at 9 a.m. That is at 28 Camino Justicia. We have great jobs, great pay, and great benefits. Come work with us.
Why do you work for Santa Fe County?
For my family.
For your safety.
For you.
For my community.
For the public.
For the community.
For the retirement.
To serve my community.
For my family.
For the outdoors.
David Crispin with the United States Marine Corps.
Jacqueline Beam, 519th Military Intelligence, U.S. Army.
Matthew Hernandez, United States Navy.
Keith Claxton, United States Navy.
Paul Portillo, United States Navy.
Robert Griego, U.S. Navy, Operations Specialist.
Chris Oakley, United States Navy, United States Marine Corps, State of New Mexico Army National Guard.
Melinda Medlin, United States Army.
Norman Aragod, U.S. Army National Guard.
Raven Nieto, United States Army.
Oscar Martin Lopez, United States Marine Corps.
Martin, United States Army retired.
Valentino Baca, United States Marine Corps.
Jeff Folgate, United States Air Force.
Kenneth Quintana, United States Army, and as well as New Mexico National Guard. Combined service, 24 years.
Santa Fe County is hiring. Every Tuesday, Public Works holds a rapid hire event at 102 Grant Avenue at 8:30 a.m. Also, the correctional facility holds a rapid hire event every Tuesday at 9 a.m. That is at 28 Camino Justicia. We have great jobs, great pay, and great benefits. Come work with us.
Why do you work for Santa Fe County?
For my family.
For your safety.
For you.
For my community.
For the public.
For the community.
For the retirement.
To serve my community.
For my family.
For the outdoors.
David Crispin with the United States Marine Corps.
Jacqueline Beam, 519th Military Intelligence, U.S. Army.
Matthew Hernandez, United States Navy.
Keith Claxton, United States Navy.
Paul Portillo, United States Navy.
Robert Griego, U.S. Navy, Operations Specialist.
Chris Oakley, United States Navy, United States Marine Corps, State of New Mexico Army National Guard.
Melinda Medlin, United States Army.
Norman Aragod, U.S. Army National Guard.
Raven Nieto, United States Army.
Oscar Martin Lopez, United States Marine Corps.
Martin, United States Army retired.
Valentino Baca, United States Marine Corps.
Jeff Folgate, United States Air Force.
Kenneth Quintana, United States Army, and as well as New Mexico National Guard. Combined service, 24 years.
Santa Fe County is hiring. Every Tuesday, Public Works holds a rapid hire event at 102 Grant Avenue at 8:30 a.m. Also, the correctional facility holds a rapid hire event every Tuesday at 9 a.m. That is at 28 Camino Justicia. We have great jobs, great pay, and great benefits. Come work with us.
And I, at this time, would call the meeting to order and ask staff if there is any addition or amendments to the agenda.
Hearing Al Saber, there are no additions or amendments to the agenda.
Thank you. On the agenda today is just one case, and that is case 235180, Todd and Elizabeth Sample variances request. And if Mr. Olivas would present staff's position.
I do. Daniel Ryan Olivas, Development and Building and Development Services, 100 Catron Street.
Mr. Olivas, if you would give the staff's presentation, please.
Todd and Elizabeth Sample, applicants. Carl Sommers, agent, requests a variance of the Sustainable Land Development Code, section 7.17.9.3, to allow residents to be greater than 18 feet in height, and a variance of section 7.17.10.7.8 to allow retaining walls to be greater than 5 feet in height. The property is within the residential community zoning district within the South Summit 8 subdivision. The 2.02 acre site is located at 1118 South Summit Ridge in section 17, township 17 North, range 10 East, Commission District 4, SDA-2. On February 26, 2021, the applicant submitted for a development permit for a construction of a single-family dwelling on the property. The property is at an elevation of more than 7,400 feet, which subjects the property to the requirements of section 7.17.10 of the SLDC. Construction on the property is also subject to a maximum height limitation of 18 feet. The plans that were submitted and approved by staff met the requirements of the SLDC. The applicants retained a contractor to construct the dwelling pursuant to the approved plans. After the building site was excavated, and the finished floor elevation was set and the dwelling was framed and the house was completely enclosed and roofed. Applicants state that only then was it discovered that the elevation of the house was approximately 3 to 5 feet above the maximum permitted height, and the retaining walls near the lower end of the dwelling are 3 feet above the maximum allowed height. The applicants are requesting these two variants so that the construction of the dwelling can be completed without remediating the non-compliant features. Although the applicants have not obtained a cost estimate for bringing the residence and retaining wall into compliance, such measures would undoubtedly be very expensive. The applicants propose to mitigate the effect of the non-conforming height by adding retaining walls and plantings to screen the parts of the home that appear to be the tallest, none of which are visible from public right-of-way. Staff recommends denial of the requested variance of section 7.17.9.3 to allow a residence to be greater than 18 feet in height, and also recommends denial of the requested variance of section 7.17.10.7.8 to allow retaining walls to be greater than 5 feet in height. If the hearing officer finds that the variances requested are minimal, easing, and/or finds that the variance request has met the variance criteria, staff recommends the following condition be imposed. The applicant shall resubmit plans illustrating the existing elevations of the dwelling and retaining walls. The plans shall include engineering plans for retaining walls stamped by a New Mexico professional engineer. This report and the exhibits listed below are hereby submitted as part of the hearing record. Staff requests the hearing officer memorialize findings of fact and conclusions of law in a written recommended order. The Santa Fe County Planning Commission may hold a public hearing on this matter on December 21st, 2023. I stand for any questions, hearing officer.
Yes, I do have a few questions. Could the retaining walls, the way I understand it is that some of the walls are actually integral to the residence itself, but are there retaining walls that could be changed without affecting the house and brought into compliance, or is it all of a piece?
Hearing officer, the walls currently right now are existing.
And do all of the walls relate to the structure of the house, is what I'm trying to say, or are some of those retaining walls just related to retaining the dirt on the slope? Maybe that's something I can ask the applicant. But I also noticed that there was a concern about the fire marshal and his recommendation, and I couldn't find anything in the material regarding that. And there was a reference to that on in Exhibit 8. I'm sorry, that's a different one, but there is a reference to the fire marshal, and I was just wondering, do you have a definitive statement from the fire marshal? I think that's NBA 014. It refers to a letter from John Lovato to Mr. Summers.
Hearing Officer Aber, so the document that you're looking at that's the Technical Advisory Committee follow-up letter?
Yes.
So that was pre-submittal, so that was just advising the applicant or their agent to contact the fire marshal's office if there was any, to see if there was any violations of the fire code or what they can do to help the, be more accessible. We do have a review from the fire marshals, an actual review. If you want to put that in for the record and look at that.
And does the review indicate that there's no safety issue or problem as far as the fire marshal is concerned?
Hearing Officer Aber, no, it does not indicate any special requirements, and it says approved as is.
Yes, then I think that should be part of this record. Yes,
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Olivas, so far as the retaining wall issues, are those related to erosion and safety, or is it really an erosion issue?
What was it? Hearing Officer Aber, may you repeat that question again? I didn't.
I'm just trying to understand if the erosion, if the height on the retaining wall relates to erosion, or is it also safety, or are they combined?
Hearing Officer Aber, they are combined. That height of a retaining wall needs to be engineered to see if it's going to be stable.
And Mr. Olivas, turning to Exhibit 7, which is a letter to you from the president of the HOA. And in that letter, it is a request that if there is approval of these variances, that as a condition of approval, that the remediation plan that was entered into between the HOA and the samples, that remediation plan would be made a condition of any approval of the variances. Does staff have a position on whether or not that would be a condition that staff would agree to?
Hearing Officer Aber, yes, that would be a condition that staff would agree to. The landscaping plan to kind of buffer the height on the site.
Okay. Mr. Olivas, I've seen several references to the fact that the permit, and I think you just testified to that the permit initially was submitted in February 2021. When was the permit approved?
Hearing officer. The permit that was originally submitted, it was approved I'm sorry, hold on one moment.
Okay.
The permit was approved March 17th, 2021.
And then there's a reference in several places to when the height deviation was discovered. Do you have any idea when that was discovered by the applicants?
Hearing Officer Aber, I don't know when it was discovered by the applicant. What happened is there's an architect that reviews these plans prior to building in that area, and she discovered that the walls and the retaining walls were higher than what the plans that's Building Development Services approved and the HOA approved, and she called me, and that's when we started a code for code to go out there and verify that the building was too high.
The reason for my question, Mr. Olivas, and thank you for that information, I'm just trying to determine how long a period there was between the discovery and the request for these variances, and whether staff considered issuing a notice of violation to bring the applicants in to work with the staff, because in parts of the testimony, staff does testify that it would have been a better situation if the applicants had come in and worked with staff. So I'm just trying to find out, since staff is recommending denial of the variations, what would be the solution? You've said there hasn't been any estimate of actual reconstruction. So is it a situation where the notice of violation would be applicable?
Hearing Officer Aber, yes, so a notice of violation, I believe, was issued, and when we went out there to look at the site, and that's I believe that's when the applicant realized that the structure was too high and the retaining walls were over 5 feet.
And at that point, Mr. Larrañaga, is it at that point that they filed for requesting of variations?
Hearing Officer Aber, yes. After a few meetings and site visits, yes.
Okay, thank you. So it seems like this has been an issue at a request for a variance before when staff recommended denial. If it's denied, then what happens? If your recommendation of not approving these variations, what would happen?
Hearing Officer Hebert, our recommendation of denial is because it doesn't meet the code requirements of 18 feet and a 5-foot retaining wall. So staff cannot, this was, whosever fault it was built this way, and then they're exceeding the height requirements. And I guess, I mean, it would go through your recommendation and the planning commission. If it gets denied at planning commission, they could appeal it to the board. Ultimately, it's the board, it would be the board, BCC's decision to see what they want to do with that structure.
I see. So it's the failure to meet the criteria, and staff's position is therefore staff can't recommend it.
Hearing Officer Hebert, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Olive. That's all I have.
Thank you, Hearing Officer.
At this time, Mr. Summer, you'd present your case, please.
Thank you. Madam Hearing Officer, I have a PowerPoint, so I have a PowerPoint that we'll be able to see, but some of the pictures are not so good, so I've printed some out. If I may give those to you so that you have them as reference. They're not every one of them, but just the ones that I think will be critical. May I approach?
Well, yes, you may. And I have a number of photographs. I wonder if they're duplicates of what you have.
I'll show you what I've got, and it's not all of my exhibits.
Thank you. Madam Hearing Officer, my name is Carl Summer. My mailing address is Post Office Box 2476, Santa Fe, New Mexico. I'm here today on behalf of Elizabeth and Todd Sample, who are here with me today, and they could answer any questions that you might have about the process or whatever. I'm going to make the presentation, and Ms. Sample may get up and say a couple of words at the end, but I wanted you to know that they're here. They would subject themselves to the oath and answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Let me, if I could, go back to a couple of questions that you had in terms of at the end there, so that they were kind of on my mind. One of them, what would happen? Your question about, well, when did we find out? We found out at the end of April of this year, beginning of May, and we spent a great deal of time trying to figure out what exactly occurred. Was it a surveying problem? Was it a construction problem? Well, we discerned that the contractor made a mistake in the middle of construction. When we found out this structure was up, stuccoed windows, walls, it's up. And so all the retaining walls, all of the structure was there at the time. So your question was, what could have been done at that time? It wasn't as though the framing was up and you could change things around. This house was 3/4 complete at that point. And so there wasn't much more for us to do other than to seek a variance. I wanted you to know that sequence of events. When we found out, that's what happened. You had a question about the retaining walls. The retaining walls are integral to the ones that are there and that we'll go through are integral to the structure. They're not retaining walls that just hold back dirt. They're integral to the structure. And so the code actually anticipates that there will be circumstances when retaining walls are higher than 5 feet, but I'll go through that in a minute. But let me start, if I can. This case is really about a very horrible mistake made during the 3/4 of the way through construction, and it's resulted in the lowest part of this house, and by that I mean the lowest part of the house down the hill, not the highest part, being out of compliance with the county code, being higher than 18 feet. I wanted to go through with you a little bit of the background of their purchase of the property, what they did, how they went through design approvals, how the problem was discovered, what the effect is, what the remediation plan is, and the standards for a variance. And I, of course, would answer any questions that you have as we go along. The samples came to Santa Fe and they found this lot in High Summit, which is going up towards Hyde Park Road. It's in the hills to the west of Hyde Park, excuse me, to the east of Hyde Park Road. This is a subdivision that was approved in 2004, I believe, or 2003, at a time when the county code was applicable to this was very different. Today, the standards are much more stringent, and this is a difficult terrain. There were approved building envelopes in this subdivision, and this building is entirely within the approved building envelope, and that's been confirmed and surveyed. When they went through a very rigorous, the samples went through a very rigorous design process, received approval from the Homeowners Association, which has a very strict set of covenants and a very rigorous process for approval. And then they came to the county and they went through that process, which was rigorous as well. And they hired the people to do exactly what needed to be done, comply with the covenants and comply with the law. Just for the hearing officer's sake, the covenants are a little different in their regulations than the county code, and they're a little less stringent. They allow for 20 feet. The code here is an 18-foot height regulation. The covenants have a similar regulation related to retaining walls. I don't want to dwell on the covenants, but the impact on the samples because of the covenants has been pretty serious, and I'll go through that a little bit. So they went through the whole process. They hired a licensed contractor. They begin the process of building what is a home they want to live in the rest of their life, and going about the process. They obviously are not on site every day, and they weren't here every day, leaving it up to the contractor to follow the plans and do what needed to be done. In April of this year, Marcy Riskin, who is the agent for the association, went out and did an inspection, which she does on all construction going on in the subdivision, and she determined visually and by measuring that the actual construction on the lowest part of this house was out of compliance with both the county code as well as the association. She wrote a very detailed email, and she sent that, and that's what started this whole process. And that's the first time that the samples learned of it, the problem. And the problem is this. It's pretty simple. On the lowest side of the house, the contractor did not dig down deep enough, and so that the lowest side of the house is higher than it should be. So at the top, the house, you'll see photographs, is at the street. It's not out of compliance with the code or the covenants at that location. It doesn't meet the design approval, but it's not out of compliance with the code there. As it steps down the hill, when you get down to the bottom, because he did not dig down deep enough, the lot falls off down at the bottom. And so those walls are taller than they should be, and the house is higher above the ground than it should be on that lowest side. That's the nature of the problem here. The retaining walls are too tall, and the house itself in those locations are out of compliance with the code. I wanted to go through thing is pretty sensitive. Hold on. Matthew? Okay, there. So this slide shows you where the house is in relationship to the street, and if you're looking at that slide, the street is, as you can see, on the right-hand side. The house then and the lot step down the hill to the left-hand side of this page, and it falls off steeply at the lowest side of the house into 30% grades. I just wanted you to see how this house sits on the lot. This is a diagram of the house, and what if you were looking from the street, you would be looking to the top of the page. So the top of this page is the lowest side of the house, and the bottom of this page is the highest side of the house by the street. This is the plan that, these are the measurements that Marcy Riskin made, and she apprised us of the problems on the house. And as you can see in red, along the outside, on the right-hand side of this page, and then moving down to the lowest side of the house, that's where the problems are. I wanted you to see what we received and the measurements she made. We subsequently did our own graph, and that areas in red are where the retaining walls and the house is out of compliance. Again, those are all on the lowest side of the house. And I emphasize that because the highest part of the house is the part that is visible from from anywhere. It's the lowest part of the house that's too high. It's not the highest part. So I've given you some photographs here that Ms. Sample and Mr. Sample showed where the contractor should have had the bottom of these footings on these retaining walls. As you can see, these retaining walls are integral to holding the house up. That red line along those is where the where the natural grade should have been dug to on these retaining walls. So if you can imagine, the mistake that he made was he didn't go down that additional distance. And that's what the problem is. I wanted you to see where it is. The code allows for a 5-foot retaining wall, and the remediation plan that the parties, when I say the parties, the Homeowners Association Board of Directors and the DRC up there, their Design Review Committee, and the samples have agreed to, all of these walls will be finished so that nothing above grade is more than 5 feet. So at every level, there will be no more than a 5-foot retaining wall showing, and there will be added some retaining walls as the code anticipates. The whole idea here is that you terrace this and plant in the terraces so that on the lower part there's a terrace with plantings, terrace with plantings, and it screens the portions of the house that would otherwise not have been visible. That's the whole idea behind this. I wanted to show you the view of this property from Hyde Park Road. This is directly down below on Hyde Park Road, looking up to it. You can't see the house from this location.
Excuse me, but I do see some house.
Yeah, those are some houses, but it's not, these are not these houses. There is a place from, I'm sure the hearing officer is familiar with the trailhead there at Dale Ball Park. I took a picture from there, and from there you can see this house, and I've got that photograph for you. So this is from the Dale Ball trailhead. It's up above. It's at the highest part of the parking lot, and that's the house. And you can see the retaining walls still having the insulation on them. The remediation plan, all of that will be, there will be retaining walls, rock retaining walls, terraced, and all of that will be shrouded and shaded by trees. You will not see any of that retaining wall from this location. And all of that would be screened, as well as the portions of the house. Looking at that house on the left-hand side, there are trees going up there, as you can see from the remediation plan. So the whole idea is to make this portion of the house from this location not visible, that lower part of the house. You can see where I've told you that the lowest part of the house is too high. That's what the visibility is at that location. From no other place in the county or in the city do you have this view of the house, but I wanted you to see that.
Could I ask you, going back to that?
Sure.
To that, behind, from that view, is the Summit Road behind the house?
Yes, it is directly behind the house, and I've got photographs from there. I just want to emphasize for the hearing officer, there was nothing to be gained by having this mistake made. And the reason I say that, this is a picture from inside the house as it's built today. You look out at this view, if you were standing 3 feet lower here, the view would be exactly the same. That's from inside the house. You don't get any advantage, nobody gets anything out of this. And this, excuse me, let me go. I'm not good at this. So this is the view from the neighbor to the east. So this is behind the house, looking out toward the house. This, you see through the trees there. You can see, just barely see the house there. So this, I'm standing on this person's building site. Their lot is above this house. This house, as built, does not extend into their view. This is not a variance that would have an adverse effect on them. They look over this house, and they would have always looked over this house.
And that's in the same HOA?
That is in the same HOA. We've talked to that neighbor, and he has no objections to the proposal that we've come up with, and because he can't, it doesn't affect him. This is a view from the house, or the site, which is south of this. What you're looking at there is the house from the building site, the closest building site to the south. I believe these people were in for a variance to allow them to build on this site recently. It was on a ridge top, and I don't know what the outcome of their hearing was, or whether they got it, but I wanted to show you, this is the view that they would have of this house, or they do have of this house. And the remediation plan has trees all along this elevation. And you can see the number of trees as shown in the remediation plan, so that any adverse impact on this property owner to the south would be mitigated. And I just wanted you to see that so that you could understand, when you're looking at the remediation plan, what are the trees designed to do? They're designed to ameliorate any impact from around the property. This is along the road behind, in the subdivision, and you're traveling south. The house is there on the right. So you can see from this photograph, and I took a couple of pictures of this so that you could see this house does not protruding, overbearing onto the roadway. It never was. It would have been in this location and about this visible. This part of the house is not out of compliance. It's 12 feet high there. It does not conform with the plan that was approved because the house is too high, but it's not out of compliance and we don't need a variance there. Nonetheless, on this elevation, you will look on the remediation plan and you will see a great deal of planting there to shade and screen this elevation. But I wanted you to see what the effect, you can imagine what the effect will be of trees in this location. This is the view from, if you're standing on the patio, I showed you this picture. That if you just walked outside of this room, did it again. I don't know exactly how. This is the view from the house looking east. And you'll recall I told you about a picture. I took that picture from over, in that scarred area where that's the head of the Dale Ball Trail there, that parking lot down there. I took that picture from there looking back this way. I took this picture so that you could see this view is not enhanced by somebody standing 3 feet higher or 3 feet lower here. This view would be exactly the same. You'd see this hill, you'd see these hills, you'd see these trees. The remediation plan will have trees in this foreground up against the house, and you can see the number of trees there that would additionally screen the lower part of this house. I put the remediation plan. This is obviously very difficult to see, but I gave you a copy there. I said at the beginning of this that this has been a horribly costly mistake. This remediation plan is going to cost over $100,000 in additional landscaping, retaining walls, rock retaining walls, and the like. This is not something that anybody would do on purpose. And the Homeowners Association approved this plan, and as you've seen from the letter from Mr. Seibel, they would request, and we consent to it being imposed as a condition of approval. I don't know if the settlement agreement that we entered into is part of your record or not, but we went through a process. I didn't handle that particular aspect of the process, but Mr. and Mrs. Sample worked very hard with the Homeowners Association and Miss Nancy Long, who's here as well, to arrive at a solution to the problem that was created here.
Yes, that remediation plan is part of the record.
It is. It's attached, and their withdrawal of their objection is actually conditioned on it being imposed as a condition here. And so we don't have any problem with it, and I think that staff has indicated that indeed staff would say that that would be an appropriate condition of approval if you were going to grant the approval. Let me just run through,
Could I just stop for you just one moment? Again, I have to go back to the safety issue. Has this construction been approved by an engineer at this point?
The answer is these retaining walls are constructed to meet the code requirements and the structural requirements of their height. They are CMU block, core filled with steel, and the footings, the big part that I think is important, and I think it's an appropriate condition of approval, which is, so these walls are taller than shown on the plan. Staff would like to know two things. One, is the wall itself constructed so that it will withstand the pressures on it? The answer to that is yes, and we will get a stamp to that. The second is the footing on this wall constructed so that it will hold the wall up? And the answer to that is yes as well. And we can get a stamp on that so that staff knows that's the case. The footing is built so that it's not going to move. The other thing is these walls are all in bedrock. I mean, they've been constructed in bedrock, but the condition of approval is something that's acceptable to us and we think is appropriate to address the safety conditions, and we have determined for ourselves that indeed they are safe.
And so, yes, that is, one of the that is staff's condition.
It is staff's condition, and we think it's appropriate. We certainly don't want a wall that is not going to withstand the pressures that are on them. The walls that are being proposed, Madam Hearing Officer, they are not similar. They're not walls that require footings and concrete. They are retaining walls that are made out of rock, and they're dry stack rock, and so they create a terrace so you can plant in them. They're not holding back a lot of water, a lot of dirt.
They're basically planters.
They're basically, planters. Yes. I'd like to conclude just by going through a couple of issues that you have to face as the hearing officer, is whether or not this is contrary to the public interest. When I think of that, and I'm sure as staff thinks about it, what is the public interest here? Well, these restrictions are intended to make houses in this area above 7,400 feet less visible. That's the height limitation, the limitation on the size, the height of retaining walls. The whole idea is that building in sensitive areas should take care to make them less visible, so as to not impact the aesthetic quality of our environment. Are these variances outside of that public interest? And the answer is no, these are not outside the public interest. And what the remediation plan does ensures that that particular interest of preserving the aesthetics in this sensitive area are adhered to. And so I believe that element of the standards has been met. The second one is where due to extraordinary and exceptional situations, strict application to the code would result in a peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties or exceptional or undue hardship to the owner. I would submit to you that these are exceptional and extraordinary circumstances. The samples were caught entirely unawares of the problem. This is not something that they would have subjected themselves to willingly, and they did nothing to contribute to this problem. It was all, unfortunately, at the hands of somebody they hired. I would say that it produces a very serious practical difficulty because you cannot lower the height of this house by tearing the roof off. It just can't be done. So the only thing that can be done is what has been proposed, and that is to remediate any adverse effect that the 3 to 5 feet in these locations would have had absent the remediation plan. So I would also say that number 3, the spirit of the SLDC is observed and substantial justice is done. So I would say to the spirit, again, the remediation plan holds to that spirit, and I believe entirely mitigates any adverse effect that this would have had. Substantial justice is a very vague term, but I think about that in terms of the people who are around this property, who are represented by the Homeowners Association. The fact that we have been able to enter into an agreement that is satisfactory to them it does justice to everybody affected, the public as well as the immediately surrounding neighborhoods, and those people in the association. So I would submit, Madam Chair, we're here by a most unfortunate, expensive mistake, and it has placed the samples in an awful position vis-a-vis the county, vis-a-vis the neighbors, and as you can imagine, they have a construction loan and they have a lender, and this has all put all of that at jeopardy. So this is not something anybody would do and say, hey, let's get 3 more feet on the lowest part of our house. I want to emphasize that did not happen here. I believe that the samples will follow through if the hearing officer sees fit to recommend approval of these variances on all of the conditions that have been imposed on them by both the association and those, if you agree with county's conditions of approval, and that would do substantial justice in this case. I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Sample, if I could, for a moment, just so she could say a few words.
Certainly, thank you.
And we would answer any questions you have as well.
Thank you very much. Ms. Sample?
I do. Elizabeth Sample, 1118 South Summit Ridge, Santa Fe, 87501. Carl has spoken great on our behalf, and I wanted to just be here to answer any questions you might have. I might quickly just help you understand, because I know it's so hard on a flat sheet of paper, but if I'm South Summit Ridge and I'm the street, the house sits on a knoll, and it goes off steeply on the topography, left and right, and obviously down to the front, which is west, which is the Jemez Mountains and the views. The house to our right sits above us, and the house, there's two homes to the right of us. One sits above us and one sits below us on a separate street. And then, as Carl pointed out, another house goes up the ridge and is up on the ridge line, and they're under construction, or they've asked for a variance for a ridgetop construction. So I hope that gives you everybody's views out to the west. The house is built within the DA. It is built to plan, and unfortunately the builder didn't build deep enough. And so as the house goes off to the corners at the end, that's where we run into the problem. But probably 2/3 of the house is in compliance with the county at 18 feet. So I'm sorry my voice is shaky.
No, that's fine. This is an unfortunate situation. So I did notice that it's a kind of a steep drop off of this road, it appears from some of these photographs. So when you drive down, is that a significant drop when you drive down?
It is. So we drive down on the left-hand side, on the south side of the house. And there were retaining walls in the plans. We just have not finished, so those were already there. So in answer to your questions about some of the walls, those are concrete walls. They've had footings. They're in place. The plans called for an additional dry stack walls to the south, and those were already on the original plans. We just haven't gotten to building them yet. On the back corner, on the southwest corner, the house sits very high. That's always been in the plans. There's always been plans to have a 2-stack wall there. Mm-hmm. So that was already there as well. So I think in Carl's picture where my husband and I spray painted the red line, you can see there are just certain areas of the house where the retaining walls are 5 feet higher. So it's my understanding when you get above 7,000 something feet, 74, you're required to have a 5-foot retaining wall. So the remediation plan addresses anywhere that we are not in compliance with the 5 feet. So sometimes that retaining wall might be 2 feet tall, and sometimes it might be 5 feet tall.
Right, okay.
And then I think when you round the corner to the north side, it's very steep. We had already asked for a variance with the county, and were granted it at the very beginning of the project, because it does drop off quite a bit, and this has been a very long building process that was supposed to take 15 months. We are now at 31 months. We've let go of our builder, obviously. And it's apparent that we'd have to have retaining walls on that side as well, just because of the erosion.
Okay. Well, I don't have any other questions.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Hearing Officer.
Does staff want to make any additional comments on this matter?
Hearing Officer Aber, no, we do not.
Is there anyone that would like to give public comment on this application for variances? I don't see that there's anyone online. Do you, Mr. Laranyagi? Is there anyone online wanting to make a comment?
Hearing us, everybody, there are individuals online, but nobody's raising their hand to speak.
Okay, thank you. Well, that concludes this hearing, and I will provide a recommended order on this matter within 15 business days from today. And thank you all for your attendance and your testimony.